Good gracious, ladies and gentlemen, a most extraordinary calamity has struck. The Empire's finest invention, a miraculous machine of time itself, has fallen into the wrong hands. Now, dreadful fiends from across the ages, spiteful mutants, demons, and horrors beyond imagination, march upon our proud West. But fear not, lion-hearted adventurers, for history's most unlikely heroes have answered the call. General Cornwallis, Old Hickory himself, Andrew Jackson, the Maestro of Mayhem, Johann Sebastian Bach, and the last Queen of France, Marie Antoinette. Play in daring single-player or rip-roaring local co-op. Blast monstrous bosses, conquer infernal bullet hells, unleash your arsenal of gadgets, gizmos, and glorious firepower. The fate of Western kind, and indeed the very course of history itself, lies in your hands, brave man of the West. Stand fast, stiffen that upper lip, and charge forth into the surprising adventures of Westmen! Wishlist now on Steam, before it's too late.
Join us for White Wellbeing.
Yay!
Let's eat.
Are you noticing changes in our country you find troubling? Do you feel unsafe and at a loss to remedy these fundamental shifts? Have you found the book Go Free by Jason Kuna? The Go Free method provides excellent meme curatives and specific language skills to overcome the anti-white psychological warfare being waged against us across the West. Go Free, a guide to aligning with the archetype of Western kind, by Jason Kuna, available on Amazon.
Our children are priceless, and we would do anything to protect them. So why aren't you using Go Free to protect them from the most harmful ideas? Decades in the making, Go Free is a simple yet brilliant practice designed to free us from destructive socio-political ideas. As words are the tools with which we think, Go Free promotes precise, simple, and targeted language to counteract psychological warfare. When you go free of the system's control over your word choice, you liberate your thinking. As you grow, you can empower others. And the most important thing you can do is inoculate our children against the ideas that are meant to harm them.
We're just waiting on Hans to start the space, folks. I'll let the bird chirp go until we get a feed from Hans.
They throw their stones, but I've got a brave heart. I'm proud of my roots, I won't be ashamed. With fire in my soul, I'll never be tamed. They want us silent, but I'll raise my voice. With every ounce of strength, I'll make my choice. No more shadows, I'll step into the light. With pride in my blood, I'll stand and fight. No white guilt, I'll carry the flame in this fight for all.
with you.
Put it in the jumbotron.
Oh, well, um, it's just in my notes, and it's uh about some things like capital punishment for the Runa Zarutska killer, and um it is kind of long though, so
Okay, DM it then.
okay. Boom. Yeah, so it's just took it out from the transcript of his video, and I just copied it. And I was like, maybe I should read some of this. He did use some of the anti-whiteism, like political correctness, and and a lot of other things, like the all lives matter, because he actually, one of the live streamer, he likes that point about the all lives matter, and those, and he was this pollster is the one that did the Scott Adams poll, the one about black people hating white people, and yeah, so he recently did another poll on that to get like further confirmation. And Scott Adams, he brought that poll up to Jesse Lee Peterson, and it was kind of nice how they had a discussion. Um, I know some people don't like both of those characters, but it is the white sympathetic sphere.
Yeah, we like them when they do or say something that's good for our people, and we don't like them when they don't. Um, so there's both those cases appear in their in their speech. But let's kick off. Welcome to the Friday edition of the Shade Tree White Wellbeing No White Guilt Space. We hold this space every day at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on X. We are a no white guilt community that meets to practice the concepts and lexicon developed by Jason Kierner, Mr. No White Guilt himself. You can find him here on X as No White Guilt NWG. That's No White Guilt NWG. On YouTube and elsewhere as simply No White Guilt, and on the web at nowhiteguilt.org. We discuss a wide variety of topics of interest to white people and look for ways to apply solutions. I'm Hans, your host. We run pretty casual here, but I do ask you raise your hand if you would like to jump in. Otherwise, I will call on speakers in turn for their thoughts. If you would like to hop in, just request a mic and we'll get you set up. We only ask that you comport yourself as much as possible to the governing lexicon and dialectic and act like a proper lady or gentleman of the West as applicable. Let's go. So I have the first post in the Jumbotron, our man of the West of the day. Now, we are going to run a man of the West every day as long as we can, just because we can. Wilhelm Richard Wagner, the composer, he's in various communities known for different things, but his achievements was as a German composer, theater director, essayist, and conductor. He revolutionized the genre through his concept of Gesamtkunstwerk, total work of art. It unified the poetic, musical, visual, and dramatic elements of the opera, the concert, the drama. He was born to the daughter of a baker and the son of a clerk. 6 months after his birth, his father died. So once again, not too long ago, this was quite common. Of course, this happens today also for other reasons. But we solved those problems, and then a new evil came along that we were not prepared for, which is anti-Whiteism. It's uncertain whether his mother married his father's friend Geyer. He kept the surname Geyer, but when he became an old adult, he changed it back to Wagner, his biological father's surname. So he starts learning the piano at age 7, which is always, yeah. I mean, I remember where I was at 7, um, and I was not playing piano, definitely not. His stepfather then dies, and he ends up in boarding school, sponsored by the stepfather's brother. And then at age 9, which is 2 years later, he listens to Carl Maria von Weber's opera, Der Freischütz, which greatly inspired him. He writes in his autobiography that this was a pivotal moment in his life. And I mean, I can remember at 9, learning to read was such a pivotal moment in my life. So we get inspired by different things, but we remember them because they were so emotional. At age 13, he starts, because he's now inspired by this opera that he saw. I don't think many children today have gets to see an opera live. You have to be, yeah. I don't think that happens a lot. It certainly didn't happen with me. There's very limited opportunities in our country to do that, and even now, all the orchestras are so white erased, they can't even play the music anymore. They play La Cucaracha and Macarena. That's what they can play these days. It's a disgrace. One of um, my friends, or my coworker, his wife plays in an orchestra, and she says it's so degrading because they played in Lisbon in the Philharmonic Orchestra, and now they white erase the orchestra to the point where they can play almost no music anymore because the new artists, the non-white artists that they get, are just not competent. And then they are basically the private bands, or they are the band for the anti-white regimes parties. So they go to these parties and they play the music like Macarena and La Cucaracha. That's what they play on their weddings and their parties. Um, and I mean, and there's no way you can go because there is no, it's the same thing everywhere. So he was greatly inspired by this opera, and at 13 years of age, he started writing his first tragedy. He first heard Beethoven's 7 when he was 15, and the same year he heard the 9th. And um, this put his radar on music as an important dramatic element. At 16, he saw a performance by a soprano, Wilhelmine Schroeder de Vrien, which also was an inspiration throughout his life, and was it was how this thing came together. And this is something that I think is important for us who raise children. Your sons, if you can get them to be passionate before or during their puberty, then you end up with someone who will maintain that passion after all the hormones are done. Um, because I believe what happens during puberty is a lot of patterns of behavior gets frozen in and they can't be changed anymore. So I really think it's important to get your sons to really get into something before they are through puberty, because you don't, because I think that's part of the problem that happens today is our boys play Counter-Strike during puberty, and then they come out of that like Bambi, who was just blinded by the spotlight, not knowing there's a truck on its way. Um, Thoroughly inspired, young Wagner enrolled at the Leipzig University. His music teacher was so impressed that he refused payment for his lectures. Imagine that. Um, None of my teachers ever thought to do that. At age 20, he writes his first complete opera and he enters the world of media. And when I read his trials and tribulations, it sounds a lot like, um, you know, it sounds a lot like what you read about Hollywood. Of course, we know Hollywood is a lot worse than what we see in the media, but um, it sounds a lot like that. He is plagued throughout by his bad decisions regarding beautiful women, who you are, of course, surrounded by when you are a world-renowned composer. He even damaged his relationship with the composer Franz Liszt because he was attracted to the daughter of Franz Liszt. Anyway, he starts out by marrying an actress, which leaves him a year later for someone else. Later, they get together again, and so it goes. And another funny thing is, it's not really funny, but his whole life is one step away from bankruptcy. These are the greatest uh, um, composers and artists in the history of mankind, and this you always hear how when they were living, they just couldn't make ends meet. But of course, some of that was his own decisions. He would several times he would mess up his relationship with an important patron because he couldn't keep his hands off a woman in that patron's circle. It is he really had he had a lot of talent, but not not a lot of control. I think what some people in our sphere would know him for is the fact that he was known for anti-Semitism, and this started with um, a, a piece he wrote about in 1850 about Judaism in music. And this is now on Wikipedia. They say this is one of the examples of his anti-Semitism. But I want to read to you what Wikipedia says about it. Wagner asserted that Jews lived as outsiders amid European societies and were disconnected from the national spirit, Volksgeist, of these countries, thus capable of producing only shallow and artificial imitations of European art music, despite having achieved technical proficiency in its study. Doesn't that sound uncannily like um, the concept biospirit discovered by Jason, it is one small step away from the concept biospirit. It's almost on the money, and there's nothing immoral about that statement, because he doesn't. He does say shallow and artificial imitations, but he doesn't say that they cannot produce Jewish music. He's saying they can only produce imitations of European music. And of course, we understand that today, that you cannot really harmonize with the biospirit of Western kind when you create art, because you don't have it. You have to simulate it. And then he goes on further to say that Jews such as Meyerbeer commercialized music that catered to the masses in order to achieve fame and financial success, rather than creating genuine works of art. And this is, once again, this is, you can say that today, and I think um, you can say that today, and it would be true, but you would also open yourself up to being attacked by with these anti-white slurs. So I think there's truth here, but there's also caution, because he's almost on the money. But the small part that he's not saying is what opens him up for attacks. And the small part is that it's not a criticism of Jews. It's that they are not white. We're not saying that they cannot create great Jewish works of art or works of Jewish art. And that's the that's the missing piece, I think. So he came to this concept, which is very interesting to me, and I knew about this before I prepared for this talk. Um, in his time, what happened was there were the music, um, the lyrics, the visual arts, the stagecraft were done by different people, and Wagner believed that if all of that came out of the mind of one person, you would have perfect communication between the roles. And then you would be able to create perfect art. And the result of this, what he called Gesamtkunstwerk, which is total work of art, was um, his first. They call it a musical drama, because it's not, because of the fact that it's not traditional opera. And the drama was called, it was a 4-part cycle called Der Ring des Nibelungen, in English, the Ring of the Dwarf. And there is a lot of uncanny similarities with the Lord of the Rings. But Tolkien vehemently denied inspiration from Wagner. He said, both the rings are round, and that's it. um, and then the drama that he wrote after the Ring of the Dwarf was called Tristan und Isolde. And once again, this was inspired by his infatuation with his patron's wife, Matilda, which once again did not end well for him. um, he of course, he did perform for Queen Victoria. Um, so he traveled the world, kings and queens. So despite his troubles and despite being on the verge of bankruptcy his whole life, kings and queens queens knew who he was, and they invited him to their courts where he performed both as a conductor, but also performed his operas, his dramas that he wrote. Um, so yes, he was. I mean, this is just what I summarized here was just a fraction of what he did. Um, it's really you can there's a lot here. This is he was, I wouldn't say he was a J.S. Bach, because Bach just produced so much music. You kind of think that um, we are being lied to, that Bach was actually multiple people because he just made too much music. But Wagner did an incredible lot of art, and he was all over the place. For instance, um, he believed that this idea that you should write music in a key was just nonsense. He used minor and major keys in the same music. So you couldn't play Tristan und Isolde in C minor because all the keys were used in the music. And you can sort of, I mean, I'm not a music, I'm not trained in music, but Beethoven sounds a lot different to um, Wagner, and I think it's for that reason they call it the chromaticism of the music, the amount of notes that they use. I see we have janitor comments. Janitor,
I have never heard any of his music, Richard Wagner's music, other than Ride of the Valkyries. And so I started searching on here, and as I was searching, you brought up the Tolkien, and I think because the anti-white meme pathogens like white guilt and also the anti-white slurs during the World War II and World War I, um, since Wagner was German and Tolkien was English, I think he didn't want to, be um, building and reaching higher, like getting on top of each other's shoulders. But so I typed into Twitter, and there's a bunch of beautiful images, like from some people like acting out this play. I mean, this opera drama, and it's like Wizard of Oz. It's like the curtains and really beautiful, and it's like maybe not warm, but a lot like Wizard of Oz, enchanting. Um, so the two ones I see are called the Siegfried, and that one has really nice art. Out of his top three, maybe top four, Lohengrin, that one looks really nice. At least how artists depict it, or how the actors they come and perform. It looks really nice. The Siegfried, I think uh people really liked like artists, they really liked it. On top of him, being a whole like composition kind of, it's all going to be a drama and opera kind of thing. The inspiration taken from it really is amazing, even for how long it's been since then.
yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I didn't even consider that. But obviously, Tolkien is not going to want to associate, because once again, if I search on Google, I get a lot of stuff about Wagner's anti-Semitism, which is once again um, any other race, they know how to make everything about themselves. Even if they are a tiny part of something, they will make the whole thing about themselves. And maybe this is what happened. Why Tolkien sort of disavowed his inspiration, because it was tainted. maybe that was a factor. New Hampshire Patriot.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon and good evening, whatever time zone to my fellow brothers and sisters of the white race. Hans, it's very nice that you brought up Richard Wagner. Being somebody who also plays a musical instrument, I play a guitar. I'm nowhere near professional, but I did take a short listen to, just to catch up on the subject. I took a short listen to some of Richard Wagner's composers, and I believe the notes that he is putting into the composure are a diminished minor or a diminished seventh. I'm not there yet, but that's what I gathered, which is a very tough note, and it is very tough to integrate that into a composure. And it's just a great subject, and I'll just land there. That's my addition to it. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I think most people today will recognize Tristan and Isolde because of the movie. But the storytelling was also, he really pushed the envelope in his storytelling, because think about, in that time, 1850, and you're telling a story where someone makes a deal with the devil. I mean, this is playing with fire. At the time where they could easily, put you on fire for heresy. Um, yes, so it was an incredible life that he. I mean, I do feel that, you know many of our greatest men of the West, they have fatal, character flaws that just make their lives hell. And it's sad to see. And I think what could have played a role was the fact, maybe it's through the rumors about his mother not marrying the friend of his father, and that sort of thing is a sort of thing where a child will be shaken in his moral foundation, and he will not, he will, and maybe that is why he was so loose with his mores. um yes, so that was it for, I mean, that's not it for Wagner. It's only a tiny um window into the man. I mean, I'm going to. I don't know his music, but I listened to small parts of the prelude to Tristan and Isolde, um, the Valkyrie, um, and the Lohengrin. So yes, I'm definitely. It's definitely different. I love Beethoven. That's my. I would one day, when I have Elon Musk money, I would like to sit in the pit of a philharmonic orchestra and listen to Beethoven's The Fifth. That would be. I only heard secondhand what those people who had that experience. So that's something I would like to experience someday. But I'm definitely going to give Wagner a chance. Like I said, it sounds interesting, very different to Beethoven, and I think it's that chromatic range of his music. So I wanted there's a couple of things that I wanted um, to talk about. The big thing in the UK now, this unification drive by Keir Starmer and the digital ID. Now, I think digital ID is bigger than the UK, and explain why, but let me just put that in the Jumbotron, the post that I want to talk about. Chick. Please, just a moment. Okay, it's in space. Let me see if I can see it. Okay, popped in. Okay, so this is a poll. It's a petition to stop digital ID. 2.7 million signatures in record time. Now, let me tell you, don't get hung up about the number 2.7 because there's 8 million Labour voters. Realize that the effort it takes for people to go and do that is an incredible barrier. You wouldn't think that. But to get 2.7 million signatures, people to go this to act on a call to action, and you get 2.7 million signatures. This is big. And then what's the response of the anti-white regime? We will introduce digital ID anyway. So total disregard. They are forging ahead because they can. Any normal, healthy government of the people will reconsider and maybe do their own polling, maybe schedule a referendum. But this is not how anti-whiteism works. When they got the bit between the teeth and there's something that they want to implement and they get the opportunity to do it, they're going to do it if they think they can get away with it. And obviously they think they can. Now, there's a lot of discussion about digital ID, and I would like to frame it as one of the battles that we fight, but there are atmospheric forces behind it that we that even if we win this battle, because this thing is coming to all Western countries. And I know that because the answer to the instabilities caused by white erasure is more tyranny. So this is of course not what the UK government says. The purpose is what the UK government says. If you can believe them, I mean, of course we can't believe what they say, but the fact that they say it, that's hard to believe, because they say digital ID will help with combating illegal immigration. So I mean, that is incredible that they would think they can get away with a statement like that, because absolutely digital ID is going to fast track illegal immigration. How easy is it going to be for them to take a non-white intruder, a non-white anti-white intruder on the beach, give him his cell phone, give him his digital ID, and load his £10,000 on or £1,000 on so that he can go shop? How easy is that going to be? £1,000 from the white taxpayer. Yes, this is absolutely what's going to happen. And there's going to be no transparency. We've seen how GDPR is supposed to protect the privacy of private citizens, but then when dissenting people in the white sympathetic sphere get debanked, then suddenly when they do a GDPR information request, suddenly there is no information on who made the request. So there is no transparency. It's when the law does not apply equally, it's just a tool of oppression. But what I want to talk about is the way that um, that people are talking about it, which is not, it doesn't take into consideration the bigger picture. So what happened was Boris Johnson made some, in the previous regime, he tried to introduce digital ID. It didn't fly, and then now Labour is doing it. But now Boris Johnson is saying he will never support digital ID. So you can see how the Uni Party operates. It's these different wings, the right wing and the left wing of the anti-white Uni Party, and they always have this fake um, this fake conflict, because the moment the Conservatives, the Tories, are in power, then if Labour couldn't get digital ID through, they would do it, and then Labour would say, "No, we reconsidered our position; it's now wrong." Um, so to think that, and we must understand that this is the way the Uni Party works. So we even reform. I'm not convinced that if reform wins, because Nigel Farage has said no digital ID. But from my point of view, he's part of the anti-white regime, of the anti-white Uni Party. And I don't, but I mean, we're going to learn, because I think reform is probably going to take down Labour. And if they do, we're going to see whether it's still the same thing. But the forces behind digital ID is the fact that white erasure creates this cultural arms race. And to keep the whole thing from exploding, they have to implement more tyranny. And Jason said this years ago, and people are still struggling with this concept. One of the other things the regime is saying is that it's going to clamp down on the black market. But all that's going to do is it's going to give white people less cracks where they can squeeze through, because the anti-white regime is white erasing us, is denying us opportunities. That's all it's going to be useful. And think about the 70 years of data that the NHS is sitting on. And all this goes into this digital ID. And do you think they're not going to let an AI crunch that data? There's not going to be any transparency in that thing. So people are talking about social credit. Of course, the way social credit will work, if they implement it, and it's one of those things that is coming, because the force behind it is anti-whiteism. So we may win battles, but until we address the source, we're not going to win the war. We need to address the anti-whiteism behind the source. But the way social credit is going to work is they are just going to say, okay, £1,000 a month, everyone gets UBI, Universal Basic Income, and it is funded by the white taxpayer. And then, but what they don't say is that £1,000 a month is conditional. It's conditional on how good a citizen were you, and this is where it will just be another differential, discriminatory victimization of white people, and especially the ones who are dissenting from the anti-white narrative. And now what people are complaining about is they're saying, look, China is actually doing social credit in a good way, because in China, it's a positive thing. In China, if you help an old lady across the street, you get social credit. And um, if you cheat in online games, your social credit reduces. So it's actually used for good in China. And I thought about that. But you could say the same with TikTok. TikTok is also used for good in China. But outside China, it's used as a psychological weapon of war. Um, so, and we only hear about the good things, but you can bet that if anyone who is critical of the Chinese government will not get any social credit. So yes, it's good in a sense, but it's good for the common people, because China is not the Chinese regime is not anti-Chinese, unlike the Western governments who are all anti-white. So social credit is absolutely not going to work the same. It's going to be another vector to victimize us with. And Janitor,
When the anti-white regime will increase tyranny, it's sometimes for addressing um crime in white erased communities. And um what I saw on this polling recently was that um blacks in America, like, they want to go harsher on crime because it harms their community. And there's truth to that, but there's also the reaction of the regime, which will continue to increase anti-white tyranny and um, do it within the anti-white narrative.
look, I don't think the anti-whites in charge want crime. They want, because crime is working against them. Crime is contradicting the anti-white narrative. But what they cannot help is they have to implement white erasure. They don't have to, but that is their moral imperative. And with that comes a lot of um, how do you say, a lot of problems, because there's going to be people who, because remember, the regime is not an abstraction. The bureaucracy is implemented by real people. And when you white erase those, and when you select for anti-whiteism, which is what the anti-white regime does, when they use reading Shakespeare as a negative signal, basically they are selecting for anti-whiteism. When they flag patriotism as a negative signal during recruitment, they are selecting for anti-whiteism. So the bureaucracy is not this abstract um, logical thing. It's implemented by real people who are, by and large, anti-white. And so if you are if you have a bureaucracy that's implemented by anti-whites, which which are um, we have our anti-white social morality, but the anti-whites in the bureaucracy is way past the norms, the anti-white norm of society. They are, I would say, are to the genocidal side of anti-whiteism, because they were selected for that, and it becomes I've seen this at one business where I worked. I consulted for a short time. When you have these poisonous people in a business, they get their like in. It's like a form of nepotism. where these people will get more people like them into the business, and then when you get there and you see you see this, wow, this is a place I need to get out of. But this is how the bureaucracies work. Um, they get their anti-whites in, and the anti-white will just work. His direct reports who are not sufficiently anti-white will just be worked out. They will be pushed out, and we call it this. The regime has a term, constructive. Um, what do they call it? When you constructive dismissal, it is where you basically make it an unpleasant environment until the person leaves. And there's a recent case, this person, Kannemeyer, from, I think it was Stellenbosch municipality. He was caught on video where he said, we are struggling to change this business. We need to make it uncomfortable for the whites. He said that on video. He's not hitting his white erasure targets. We it's not enough to wait till one of them resign, so that we can get um, um, a diversity, in his words, candidate in. We must make it uncomfortable for the whites. Um, so this is happening behind closed doors all the time. In this case, I don't know who took the video. I mean, that person is, I don't know the circumstances of that, but usually that won't happen. Anti-whites won't talk like that unless they are in an anti-white um, environment. But back um, to the social credit and um, the symmetry with TikTok, because what happened with TikTok now is Larry Ellison. I think Larry Ellison's business bought TikTok, and they are now going to clamp down on anti-Jewish sentiment. And I've listened to various people in the white sympathetic sphere, the explicit white sympathetic sphere, talking about this. And I'm sure you've heard it as well. Their problem with this is that this is a violation of free speech. People must have the freedom to slander Jews, and they're missing the obvious, which is why can we not get the same thing that Jews are getting? In other words, TikToks that are anti-white must be banned. Isn't that a much better solution? That both slandering Jews and slandering whites is now prohibited. But no one wants that. They just want to be able to slander Jews. And this is just um, such a demonstration that these anti-non-whites don't care about us. If they cared about us, they would say, yes, do the same for anti-whiteism. But they're not saying that. They say, no, it's fine. Let them degrade our youth. Let them make everyone trans, as long as we can slander Jews on TikTok. And it's the same with this. Or I thought about the TikTok situation when they talked about the social credit, because TikTok works the same as social credit. In China, TikTok is only showing healthy videos to the youth. But the difference is China is anti-white. So in the West, it's going to do the anti-white thing. Just like social credit is going to not work the same in the West because of anti-whiteism. It's going to be a tyrannical tool to get to victimize white people with no transparency. It's going to be we saw a little bit of this nightmare situation in Australia, and some of that in Austria, where in COVID, you couldn't go into a shop if you didn't have your vaccine pass. I think it was in Western Australia or New South Wales, one of those. Um, and this is a very dystopian future. But once again, this is one of the battles, and we may win this. It's like these hurricanes. You know, um, this digital ID storm may be defeated, but there's a new one coming, and we only have to lose one, and then we have digital ID. So we need to address um, the anti-whiteism behind it. And what is the anti-whiteism behind it? Well, it's the fact that crime, that the whole um, um, impetus behind the white erasure of our Western norms and standards, it causes anti-whites in the legal system to insist on freedom from responsibility, preferential treatment, special privileges for non-whites. And this incentivizes repeat offenses, which makes violent crime, shoot through the roof. And this is the motivation for more tyrannical control. So if you took that away, then crime goes away. We know that because we can dial back time and see what happens to crime. It goes down. It goes down to the point where all races have the same per capita crime. So the anti-whiteism is the white erasure of our norms that closely follows the white erasure of society. Because, like Wagner said, these people, they how did he word it? They are only capable of producing shallow and artificial imitations of Western norms. And in a climate of anti-whiteism, they will invert our Western norms. They will insult them because that feels like the moral thing to do when you are in this anti-white social morality. So yes, the digital ID. I don't know anyone who has seen the movies like Minority Report. You sort of get an idea of what tyrannical control can look like, and it's really going to squeeze you to a smaller and smaller space till you can't move. And thinking, I mean, even going out into the woods, you're basically going to have to make a tent in the woods, and even then, there's going to be satellites monitoring you. But it was just so blatant that that the UK regime would try to pass the idea that they're going to tackle illegal immigration with digital ID. That's just laughable. Janitor.
I like the discussion part where it's like the private versus public aspect, because um with the with I mean the anti-Jews and on TikTok or whatever, they want to be, on the public square saying anti-Jew things, and they're like, oh, but why are you coming after me? And it's like, well, that's what we want, but for anti-whiteism. And I think the publicity of um Irina Zarutska, how uh there was a majority of voters across demographics support the execution of Carlos Brown, with even higher support among those who have seen a photo of the victim. So the only reason the some like Twitter guy posted Irina Zarutska, and a lot of people shared her photo and found out more about her, and there's more support for uh the victim, her, after seeing a photo of her. And that's It's not something you can do in private. That you need the public square to do that. And like the something else that's another public opinion was about the sentencing, and 52% of Americans believe the system is too soft on violent criminals, while only 11% think it's too harsh. And I just think, yeah, it's like a public thing where you go out and you're gonna have. I know we don't want to lose, so um, but yeah, I do want to win, and I don't care what these anti-Jews want or at all.
That's the thing. We want to win, and um, it doesn't harm us if people are prevented from slandering Jews. In fact, it helps us because when white people do that, they play the villain and they reinforce the anti-white meme pathogen that white well-being is linked to the detriment of other groups. When they slander other groups and they talk about white people, then they make that link. So I would rather just block them from slandering other groups, and then they can talk about white people all day because they're not linking the two, which is the reason why tens of millions of white people won't defend us. Um, Janitor, I see your hand is up. I don't know if it's still up or if it's a new hand. Go ahead.
Well, you're saying the linking, and I think, yeah, that brings up another point about this topic I was researching, and it's how the All Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter slogan campaigns, and I think we have a good grasp on that, but I just want to share some uh polling on it. It's 50% of respondents have a favorable impression of BLM, while 41% have unfavorable impression. And the breakdown of the support of this is self-identified liberals show the highest support for BLM, 83%, while Republicans have the lowest. The favorable impression compared to other to Donald Trump. So there's BLM enjoys a higher favorable impression than Donald Trump's job performance. And I think that could be because of maybe like war in Ukraine, or more likely Epstein. But I'm talking about the linking and how the anti-Jews try to link it to white people. It's very similar to this campaign where it's Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, and it's 65% of people surveyed believe all lives matter, while 20% believe Black Lives Matter. And there's a noticeable shift towards favoring all lives matter compared to June 2020 when this poll was last conducted. And a majority, 51% of Black voters surveyed support the statement all lives matter.
Where is this poll?
I think it's a subscriber kind of thing, but I did just get it out of a transcript, so I didn't technically pay for it. I just watched it. Um and I it was that message that I messaged you earlier, but I wrote it down kind of better now to you. DM.
Okay, I haven't looked at it. I'll take a look later. So the next one that I put second from the left in the Jumbotron, I just put this, we talked about this yesterday. Daniel Concannon had 12 years of a spotless track record in education. He's banned for life, basically, from education because he objected to what we call anti-white obedience trading in 2021. And this non-white, anti-white, the superintendent, he came in here, no qualifications, no immigration status, criminal record, and he's a superintendent with a six-figure salary. He just walks into the job. He has nothing. all he has is he was born not white, and every door opens for him. And this, another um, content creator highlighted the fact that this pattern repeats over and over. This is not the exception. This is the rule. And those females that were responsible, nothing is happening. Nothing is going to happen to them because the system is infested with these people. We need to change the conversation, and this kind of thing is changing the conversation. Um, let me just see if Concanon. Okay, he doesn't call it out as anti-white in this case. You see, um, he puts white privilege in quotes, which is a good thing because you delegitimize the concept. But it would have been great if he just said that um, this was white erasure, and that this is happening all over the place. Um, and it shows you that um, the anti-white narrative that the West is set up for Western kind is not only fiction; it's an inversion. It's a total inversion. Um, white, especially young white males, they there is no door that opens for them. They have to push open the door, and most of the doors won't push open. Um, and I think it was Dr. McDonald who said that um, no white male can get into medical school, no matter how good he is, in the US. And in South Africa, it's the same thing. I know two different people who have daughters um, who are doing medical degrees, and the story is the same. Um, there's no white males. There's a few white females, and in the first semester, almost all of the non-whites flunk out, and then the classroom is empty. And then what the university does is they invite all the whites that they white erased to they magnanimously invite the whites that they white erased to come in the second semester, and they have to catch up on their own time the first semester that they missed. This is how disgusting these universities are. So not only so now they make their money. They make more money now because they already get paid for these non-whites who flunked out, because these are all sponsored by white companies. And now they make even more money by magnanimously giving the opportunity to, and I'm almost sure the students will pay for the first course as well, because how else are they going to get the credit for the first course? So absolutely disgusting. And then when the head of the medical board, a white woman, when she just mentioned this on a radio show, they socially lynched her. But they didn't just fire her; they made her um, apologize. They made her apologize, and then after she apologized, they fired her. Disgusting, and it's such a they are, especially when you get to the level of these anti-whites in South Africa, where they are really, it's almost genocidal how anti-white they are. They are very vindictive. They don't let go, and they will twist the knife. It's not enough to ruin your life. They will do it in public and ritually humiliate you. Janitor.
I went to a university and had a apartment, and one of the roommates of mine, he was a medical student, I think senior year. I think he may have even had a fiance, and he was from South Africa, and he was really smart. Um, uh, and his name was Christian. And so I looked up, like, he could be German or Afrikaner or English, but he was from South Africa, and he was really like, I mean, the best roommate, like way better than my other roommates. The best roommate I probably ever had. Um, and it was the first time I ever knew anybody from South Africa.
That's interesting. Yes, Christian is an Afrikaans name. It's Afrikaans for Christian. Christian is also an English name. Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, the fact that we are now scattered throughout the world is because they are escaping the consequences of anti-whiteism. And the reason why they are escaping to those countries is because they it's less. There are less anti-whiteism in those countries. There's still opportunities for white people, but it's coming. I mean, we see in the UK. The UK is probably the worst. Yeah, so long term, it's all, yeah. So this is a problem that all of us have. And I mean, it's good if he can find temporary relief, especially for young males. Um, when the opportunities dry up, it's psychologically important for you to get something to do, to get something real, a real work. It's very important for a white male. I believe it's the work ethic part is in our biospirit, and if you are prevented to do that, it's even Wagner, he complained about that. He had a nervous breakdown because he couldn't produce because of all the stress, mostly caused by himself and his interactions with females. He just complicated his own life so needlessly. Um, and that, so I see that all over the place. When white males can't work, um, and some of our friends or the people we know in the Netherlands, they couldn't understand this because they thought everyone was like them. If you invite them into their neighborhood, they will want to work. And they were aghast to see that these non-white intruders were happy to do nothing. They were happy to just collect all the benefits that they can, even benefits that they don't technically qualify for, and just sit and do nothing. And those people, our friends, couldn't understand it. And and this was before I um, had the language to talk about that, because um, before the concept of biospirit, you really couldn't talk about that really, other than being white negative. And that's a social, that's a social grenade that destroys your relationships. Um, but yes, I remember how flabbergasted they were that, um, because they thought how it was going to work is you have this beautiful cultural town, and then you bring these people in from Nigeria or Somalia or whatever. You put them in between these beautiful houses in between uh, the Dutch, and then these poor people will learn how to live well. And then what happened was the opposite. The white people started acting like non-whites. The whole, it was the opposite that they expected. The non-whites were not pulled up; the whites were pulled down, and then the whole neighborhood was destroyed. Many cultural cities, especially in Belgium, they are just slums now. They were tourist attractions. Now it's slums. But back to Concannon. So this is really, really sad because Concannon is one of the good ones. He's out of a job. I mean, he's hanging on by a thread. He's struggling to put bread on the table. Yes, this other guy, and you can, you know, and this is such an extreme example, but there's a whole spectrum between this guy who couldn't even properly read or write and people who are somewhat competent who can pass. And the only reason why they can pass is because everyone gives them a free pass. And they are everywhere. Um, because our Western standards are so degraded now, and everyone is so afraid of being socially lynched when they step out of line. So it's just I had to just bring up this contrast because we have two cases here. Um, one, the white man who is trying to do everything he can, he's pushed down, and he's he's tried everything now, and now he's begging. But basically, that's what he's doing. This other one, nothing's going to happen to him. At worst, he's going to be deported at our cost back to his country. And are they going to take the money that he stole? Or is he now going to live like a king in whatever hole he crawled out of? Yes, this is anti-whiteism. And this goes back to that discussion yesterday that we had about um, don't play the victim. We don't play the victim. We are being victimized. Daniel Concannon, there's nothing he can do. He cannot think himself out of um, the anti-white victimization of the education system. He cannot think himself into another industry where he's trained to be in, because he's trained. He spent years of his life to be a good educator. You cannot just think yourself into an engineer position or into a sales position or into anything else. He was trained for that. It was his passion. Now that's gone. So yes, we are victimized, and this is an example of fake victimization, playing the victim, and real anti-white victimization next to each other. So I'm going to bring up the next one that I wanted to talk about. I saw Janitor had his hand up for a short while and then he went down again. Are you fine, Janitor?
I'm okay, and I really like the white children are told they're guilty and they have no defense, and that is victimization. Uh, and I'm now realizing why that connected with me all day and like all since last space. So thanks for bringing that up.
I'm just posting the next one in the Jumbotron. Just give me a few seconds. My X has been quite stable today. Okay, I shared it. Let me see if it appears. Okay, far left of this Jumbotron. So this is now this guy, Stephen. He's from the UK. I'm just going to read. I love when the Maoris stand against the Palestine jihadis and declare Jesus Christ is Lord of this nation. Maori are now one of my favorite people. Do you feel the same? Well, no, not quite. What this person is doing, of course, is these non-whites now legitimize his position. And it's kind of interesting to me that he doesn't know that these Maoris are paid to be there. They didn't come to fight for Christendom. They are paid to be there. This is the vacation for them. This is a job. Yeah, and I mean, what more can I say about that? This is white erasure. I mean, so another example of when you misidentify the problem, your solutions are going to misfire, because the problem with the Muslims is not the religion. The religion is an expression of their biospirit. The problem is they have a different biospirit. The Maori have a different biospirit. If you flood the country with Maoris, you're going to have very similar problems. So um, so there's no good outcome here. What these Maoris, but the real function of the Maoris is not white erasure of the population. The function of the Maoris is to defuse the spark of peoplehood that's happening in white people when these non-whites come into their country. Now what they do is they bring in good non-whites. See, it's a quality issue, but it's not a quality issue. The issue is with the biospirit, which there's no getting around that. And I was this is a funny thing that I just have to tell. So I'm listening to a discussion between Mark Collett and Morgoth. And listen if you can recognize what's going on here. So Mark Collett is complaining. He's saying, 10 years ago, um, the Muslim on the corner shop, he had Union Jacks flying, and he was more English than the English, and that was no problem. But now that all changed. Now they come into the country and they right away they are anti-white. So of course this is, I mean, he should know this, because how many times did Jason explain to him how numerical diffidence works and how it turns into numerical courage? But it's as if they don't listen. They when they are, I think when they are on the live stream, they check the super chats. Their eyes flicker over all the screens and there's nothing going into their heads. He was articulating numerical courage without using the word, as if it's a new concept that he's discovering. It's incredible. Let's see, what's next? Yes, so this is now the Maori stance against, I mean, Maori Christians. Please. If Maoris are the bastion of Christendom, it's over for Christianity. Let me check the next one. I think I did already put it in the jungle. Wait. No, no. Okay, so this is a bit on a lighter note, I would say. It's still anti-white, but it's anti-white light. Let's have some anti-white light. Okay, now my X is threatening to crash. I can feel the crash is coming. Okay, it's holding up. I'm sharing in the space. Now wait a few seconds, because X, they don't, speed is not a feature in the X architecture. Okay, so we have on the far left. So this is about this Greta Flotilla. So the Greta Flotilla is on its way to Gaza, and guess what they do now? Because they're coming close. They're putting on their hijabs, they're folding up the LGBT flags, because in Palestine, it's a death penalty. Now, it's kind of funny, but it demonstrates how the anti-white alliance they have no shame. They know they have irreconcilable differences, but they are bound by this iron band of anti-whiteism. They will put their differences aside, but actually the differences are not really put aside. What happens is the LGBT faction just submits. There's another one that I want to put. Let me put that also, where you can see that there is a conflict, but the LGBT always obeys radical Islam. And I'm going to share this one as well. Let me share that. It's another example of this is now in the Netherlands. Radical Islam was the pro-Palestine protest, and then what happened was some confused character with an anti-white flag pitched up, and he was accosted by these Muslims. It should come in shortly, but it's the same thing. So this person with his anti-white flag, the Palestine protesters don't want him in their group. They chase him because, of course, in their country he would be killed. And once again, there is no consequences for these conflicts. Only when a straight white male has a conflict with either a Muslim or an LGBT activist will there be consequences. This is just internal conflict, and it's resolved by the LGBT activists submitting, because in that hierarchy, the Muslims are non-white, so they will always, no matter how many anti-white privileges you stack, the white anti-white will always slot in below the lowest non-white anti-white. And you can see that because straight non-white males are still higher than the trans woman or the trans male, by sexual, gender fluid, whatever, disabled, what is other categories like, what do they call it when you're stupid? Neurodivergent. You can stack all those categories, it's not going to help you. You're going to slot in below the straight non-white male. And this is what's happening here. Yes, so the Greta Flotilla, and you see this with all feminists. Feminist activists will visit Muslim countries, and they will they will clothe in the appropriate clothing for that culture. They will act like those women, totally submit. But when they are in the West, there's none of that. then they invert every Western norm, because there are consequences in Muslim countries, but there are no consequences. And also, of course, feminism is anti-whiteism. It's the same. It's a subset. It's a subset of anti-whiteism. So they're all pulling in the same team, pulling Western civilization into the cliff, into the depth. Okay, so that was it. But I must say, the flotilla, it is funny in a way that they are these rabid feminists and rabid LGBT activists, and then suddenly everything gets packed away when they get to their best friends in the Middle East. That was it. It's a shorter space today, as it tends to be on a Friday. So I'm going to just go around for final thoughts. Then you can shut this down and have a nice coffee. Janitor, final thoughts.
I can't wait to listen to the space again later on. Thanks for letting me bring up my notes and my polling. Because a lot of the part that's changed my life with Go Free is the influence on people who I thought I'd never be able to like reach, even with barely even knowing about white positivity like before then. And also how I told you when I was like 9, I was looking up the word anti-white in the dictionary, and then you brought up how this Westman, he was like 20 and composing operas, and also like the way that when you're young and you read and you have like a mentor or something, and you're an apprentice, you have like those values can really get honed in, and so that's definitely how thankful I am. So
Yes, and I think it's really important um, to get your son to be interested in something real before he gets through puberty, because I really think something happens there where you can see how patterns of behavior gets frozen in, and it's very hard to change. So I really think that's something, and I see that in many brilliant people, that they had a passion, and it developed while they were still young. You rarely see someone pivoting to some, you know, thing where they are just way beyond everyone else, and it's something that's totally new. It happens, but I really think we should there's a critical part in a boy's life from 11 to, I'd say, 17, where you really have to hit while the iron's hot in that period. New Hampshire Patriot, final thoughts? New Hampshire Patriot is busy, so thank you, everyone. Have a really great weekend. I'm looking forward to it. Oh, I just wanted to say, mention something else. I know. um, so there's this Mahmood character that um, that is on Twitter, and this character referenced um, an instance of a previous, quite a few years ago, where one of these non-whites claimed he was English and there were no consequences to that. And I think Mark Collette said the reason why was because they were not threatened. Now we are threatened, so now it's a problem. When it's a tiny minority, they go out of their way to show how English they are, but now they don't bother anymore. So once again, he's expressing numerical diffidence that turns into numerical courage, but he's also expressing why focusing on the negative characteristics doesn't work, because you have to wait for the negative effects before you can get people, you can motivate people to act. While in our case, we just say simply that white erasure harms white well-being in many ways. So in other words, you always have to tune your society to have less white erasure. And in that case, you're never going to get into a situation where it project their own bias spirit, even the best of them.
Our children are priceless, and we would do anything to protect them. So why aren't you using Go Free to protect them from the most harmful ideas? Decades in the making, Go Free is a simple yet brilliant practice designed to free us from destructive socio-political ideas. As words are the tools with which we think, Go Free promotes precise, simple, and targeted language to counteract psychological warfare. When you go free of the system's control over your word choice, you liberate your thinking. As you grow, you can empower others. And the most important thing you can do is inoculate our children against the ideas that are meant to harm them.
Good gracious, ladies and gentlemen! A most extraordinary calamity has struck. The Empire's finest invention, a miraculous machine of time itself, has fallen into the wrong hands. Now, dreadful fiends from across the ages, spiteful mutants, demons, and horrors beyond imagination, march upon our proud West. But fear not, lion-hearted adventurers, for history's most unlikely heroes have answered the call. General Cornwallis, Old Hickory himself, Andrew Jackson, the maestro of mayhem, Johann Sebastian Bach, and the last Queen of France, Marie Antoinette. Play in daring single player or rip-roaring local co-op. Blast monstrous bosses, conquer infernal bullet hells, unleash your arsenal of gadgets, gizmos, and glorious firepower. The fate of Western kind, and indeed the very course of history itself, lies in your hands, brave man of the West. Stand fast, stiffen that upper lip, and charge forth into the surprising adventures of Westmen! Wishlist now on Steam, before it's too late.
Well, it seems like Hans had a little bit of technical trouble there towards the end, but that's all right. Great space. Thanks to all of you who showed up here and tuned in on YouTube. I appreciate it very much. And we'll see you all again tomorrow on the Shade Tree. Bye-bye.